he messed up. Now, it's not because he's standing for what Ukraine needs and, being very pushy about it. It's because he's speaking from a perspective where Ukraine can just demand what it wants, and all of its friends and allies and everyone in the world, even non-allies like India, are somehow needed to provide Zelensky with everything he wants. Is this damage irreparable? I have spoken with minds much better than mine. Just check out this video where I talked to Lieutenant General Raj Shukla about goings on in Europe and what is expected. But really, it's about what the rest of Europe decides, but a lot more about what Trump decides, because whether anyone likes it or not, that is the president of the United States, which has the largest military, has provided the largest aid packages to Ukraine of late. So what has caused Zelensky to just change his mind? So he went into the White House, and there was this, rather funny to the rest of the world, but honestly very undiplomatic spat that was seen in the Oval Office. Now, supporters for the continuation of war in Ukraine have suggested that it is the fact that English not being Zelensky's first language has caused a lot of miscommunication when it came to how he was perceived by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, the president and the vice president of the United States. However, others have said that it was simply unfair to go in and demand what he needed and be rather rude to his hosts who went there, who allowed him to come up with a proposal and were there to actually conduct business. So what happens is this funny thing where JD Vance asks him why he hasn't shown any gratitude towards the United States. So then, after a rather unfriendly exit from the White House, Zelensky goes back and tweets at every country and the president and the prime ministers and the leaders of all of those countries that he's very grateful for everything. Now, look, J.D. Vance was sort of in the wrong in the sense that Zelensky has actually posted about, how grateful he is. However, what has happened is that that wasn't a sort of virtue signaling that he was asking for. It was in the context of the US wanting to conduct a trade deal as well with the Ukraine to show that, they could be more than just takers and could build a truer partnership if they were to receive even more of American taxpayer funding. So in that sense, what came across was very disconnected from any diplomatic dialogue that could be expected. And Zelensky goes back and angrily starts posting how, he thanks each of them in person, each of the, how he's grateful to the US and all of those things. Within a week, though, we see this abrupt change to where Zelensky admits that the meeting did not go as planned, and he is looking to make amends. It was not well received in the rest of Europe, because most of Europe has put their full weight behind Ukraine and against Russia. There are many, many historical factors, geographical factors, and the fact that they have been a rather united front when it comes to the Russia problem, especially since the Cold War era. But that does cause a lot of dissonance when it comes to real life current affairs in 2025. The situation in 2025 is very unlike the situation before, a few decades earlier, the situation in the Cold War, after which the Soviet Union collapsed. And that Russia is, something that Putin himself has wanted to alienate modern Russia from in that sense. He does not. Most people in Europe will even be confused if they were asked about Russia being communist. Russia is no longer communist after the fall of the USSR. So there are things, that do not translate well from European politics to American politics, especially with Donald Trump being president now, because this is a businessman who is used to transactional deals, who is very nationalistic in his approach. He always goes in with the America first. And at this point, because of the economic upheaval, this has meant focusing on American economics and bringing it up to a certain level, which I'm not sure how well it is going to go with all of the talks of reciprocal tariffs, etc., which can be a completely new video. If that's something that you would like to understand better, do leave me a comment, asking about how that can affect different countries, but especially the USA. But at this point, what has happened is that focusing on the economics, according to Donald Trump, means cutting a deal. And in this case, he expects that the Ukraine, which has a lot of rare earth minerals, will give up, a certain amount of those minerals in exchange for more military and economic aid. So Zelensky is also not particularly popular in certain parts of the US, especially the part that voted Donald Trump into power, because he has not shown the most integrity when it comes to positioning this war. He and his wife have been seen on the cover of Vogue, which is a fashion magazine, and there have been videos where they are shown smiling and setting a space up to recreate the effects of war, which is deemed to be rather insensitive, because there is actually a war that is going on, and these people seem to be living in a manner that is much more disconnected, as if they are living very rich lives, whereas the rest of the Ukrainian population, which is being conscripted because there are no more volunteers left to go fight the war, which has sort of become a meat grinding machine. So they are being conscripted. Actually, even Russians are being conscripted. So, it's just bad at this point. So people are being conscripted to go and fight the war. And here's their president doing a fashion magazine shoot. He is giving out news bites. He is doing his celebrity thing that he did as an actor and as a comedian before. And that's not something that is coming across, that is translating particularly well to a non-European population. And we need to keep our minds open about what will be happening. But there is a deliberate and certain push from the United Nations as well as Russia to end this war. And this would mean a lot of compromise. Zelensky went back after the disastrous White House meeting and said that this war is not going to end for a long, long time. Now, just about 2 or 3 days later, he says that, the meeting did not go according to plan. If his plan is to come back and request more funds in exchange for nothing, even if he is nice, even if he puts up a better front than before, and it must be remembered that these people do not like him. Look, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have made their personal displeasure known, asking him why, hinting at why he did not wear a suit, that it was disrespectful to the office that he holds and to the office that he was representing in the White House. And they have spoken about him sort of forcing the hands of a lot of European nations as well as that of American taxpayers in his quest for more funds, which also do not seem to be translating on ground for Ukraine. When it comes to, there has been a lot of money that has gone missing. There's been billions of dollars, billions of American dollars that have been sent to the US. There's a call for more aid. After the White House meeting, Keir Starmer of the UK, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Justin Trudeau, they've all, as well as every European leader, tweeted, posted out in support of Zelensky, but they have nothing to give. all the European nations are dependent on American money, American military aid, and they have no military equipment. I mean, the funny part is that Luxembourg, the leader of Luxembourg, tweeted out that he was supporting Zelensky in this war. And they have about 930 soldiers all in all. That's a tiny nation. What do these posts of support even mean at this point, except to virtue signal to their domestic audiences, which really does put the people of the Ukraine in a lot of in a really bad position, because these people can only look to other nations to support them as a signaling mechanism to their own domestic audiences to showcase what they stand for rather than actually providing support. The only nation that can provide adequate support is the USA, and the USA is currently unwilling to do so. Now, if you have read any articles that you really like, to leave them down, because a lot of the audiences that come on here are interested in reading about what about the situation in more depth, and I do not think that videos do it sufficient justice. It's just something that gets people engaged. So in order to learn a little more and a little deeper, I would recommend the articles that I've linked below as well, and I would love if you also leave a few of your articles below. But if you like content like this, I would really appreciate your support. A like is free. You can also click on the link to buy me a coffee in the description box. But going back to the topic, Zelensky has been in a bad position, but especially since the coming of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is not someone who is willing to compromise. This is not a man that is okay with compromising in many situations, but especially in situations that require American funds. In his last term as well, he ensured that South Korea, and I think probably Japan as well, paid a lot more in order for their defense, dealings with the USA, because if you did not know, after the Cold War, after the Second World War, the US has taken over defense for Japan, and they don't spend militarily. Same with South Korea as well. So Trump came in and immediately sort of bullied South Korea into paying more for their defense from the US, because that is something that he believes that the US is entitled to. Now, that is a matter of debate, but it is also a matter of real politics. We are dealing with someone who is extremely transactional in nature. He's someone who understands business deals. He is not particularly interested in the nuances of diplomacy, because those nuances eventually mean nothing without hard power, and America has hard power to back up all of their demands. And that is something that Trump realizes particularly well and uses to his advantage. So is Zelensky done for good? Elon Musk, Donald Trump have already stated that he is not someone that they expect to come back to power if there were a true election that were held in Ukraine. Is that possible? Not in the midst of a war. It's very, very unlikely that there will be elections in Ukraine. However, since we've discussed that he is not very well liked by the American leadership at this point, it is not unlikely that they might push for a change in leadership if Zelensky does not start to show any signs of coming to the negotiation table with Putin. Because one thing that we've seen earlier as well with signing of the Abraham Accords in Trump's last term, Trump wants to be seen as a global leader who is able to mediate. Now, he has said that in terms of negotiation, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is someone he respects a lot and has surpassed him in terms of negotiating, etc. However, he does not feel that way about every world leader, and he certainly does not feel that Zelensky has the potential to do that, to negotiate hard. He is, however, looking to place himself in the middle of Russia and Ukraine so that he can sort of be the harbinger of peace in this case, to be remembered and build a legacy if that is ever allowed by the media and those who write the history books later on. However, his main agenda is really to end the war with profit for the US. US private companies are already actually invested in Ukraine. They have already bought up a lot of the farmland along with the Chinese. But there's a lot of debate around how much of the money is laundered, how much of it is really something that the government can take advantage of. But that's really a different topic. But at this point, what Trump wants is for the war to end. What Zelensky wants and has made clear many, many times is for the war to not end. To what end, he is intending to push for it is something that needs to be questioned. I think it's a legitimate question, whether it's Americans or the rest of the world that is suffering. There's a lot of supply chains that have been readjusted to the ongoing conflict. There has also not been adequate media attention on the fact that Ukraine actually saw a lot of neo-Nazism, which is not discussed. I mean, it is only discussed in parts of the internet, which is not legitimized by the mainstream media. And there have been videos that I have personally watched where neo-Nazis have attacked Romanians, have attacked others of who are not considered white Ukrainians by them. The leaders of neo-Nazis, their portraits from the Second World War, their portraits have been behind some of the Ukrainian leaders who are in positions of governmental power there. So that has been very disturbing, and that's something that has aided Putin's narrative of the denazification of Ukraine being reason for the conflict. There has also not been adequate concern raised about the fact that Russian-speaking populations have been systematically attacked by the Ukrainian military and the people in the Donbas region. So that those have been reasons that Putin has cited for the current conflict, in addition to Ukraine's bid to enter NATO. So at this point, is it really messed up for Zelensky? Well, it seems very likely that it's messed up for Zelensky, and it's not because of the White House issue only. There has been no there has not been a conciliatory tone that has been taken up by anyone in Europe that has kept him pumped up. But at this point, because the NATO exists because of USA, let's be real, this is something that is very serious. Even if the rest of Europe comes together, their economies in the doldrums, there is extreme dependency on Russia with regards to their energy requirements. There's extreme dependency on China because they are a deindustrialized continent at this point. And so Europe itself cannot supply Ukraine with everything that it needs to win this war. So it's more and more unlikely that Ukraine will be at a disadvantage militarily. Now, NATO has treaties. Now, NATO treaties with its allies implies that whoever is part of NATO is protected by the US, in the sense that US will militarily aid anyone who is attacked and is part of NATO. Now, Trump and his decision maker in chief, one of his decision makers in chief, Elon Musk, have discussed stepping out of NATO. That is quite likely, considering all of the global bodies that Trump has stepped out of. He is no longer part of WHO. He's no longer part of, I think the UNRWA has been disbanded. So it is quite likely that the US is uninterested, but also Putin has asked for Ukraine to be a non-NATO member as part of the negotiation, as part of any peace treaty that will be signed. And that was something that was actually promised to him when NATO was coming together. So not, but it was more of a non. It was more of a verbal treaty. It was promised that NATO will not take another step eastward, and they did. And so it's caused a lot of angst. If you remember, the US was similarly disturbed with Russia, with the Soviet Union placing missiles in Cuba, which is next door to the US, and hence the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred. So it is quite understandable from a Russian perspective that having no buffer zone with NATO would cause it security concerns, which is something that American realists like Henry Kissinger and John Mearsheimer have cited repeatedly in their works and speeches. So, is Zelensky going to come to the negotiating table? It seems more and more likely. It's been interesting to see that he's using a different tone now. Suddenly, just a few days after all of the workplace conflict, so to speak, that he brought forth, and so we are unlikely to see peace soon because most of Europe is not in a mood to compromise, but. Maybe there will be baby steps being taken by Zelensky in coming to the negotiating table. This is something that Donald Trump is trying to execute in West Asia. I think they were in Riyadh for a bit. And talks aren't going according to plan, obviously, because the White House meeting happened shortly after. And it remains to be seen if how long it takes to actually finally bring peace, and it remains to be seen if Zelensky is in power after that. But if he is unwilling to compromise, there will be other steps taken. It is quite likely that Donald Trump and his government might push for a different leader to come to power. Again, bullying a country into doing what they want, what the US wants, is something that the US can actually accomplish to a certain level. But there are too many things involved, too many variables at play here. It's not particularly likely that an election will be held. Like even in Romania, despite, of course, the US is slightly less interested, even though Elon Musk has been tweeting about it. Elections were cancelled, and so it's not particularly likely unless he uses open regime change methods to sort of initiate an election. And we also don't know if Zelensky is actually as unpopular as American sources tell us at this time. So I loved this hilarious video where I think it's made by an Indian content creator, where it shows, I think this is a great use of AI, by the way, the actual body language of Zelensky and Donald Trump being translated to an all-out fight. So enjoy this. But if you like this video, I would recommend that you actually listen to the one that I mentioned before. It's here, so you should watch it. And thank you for joining me today.